Tonight, when the sky goes dark, you'll do something almost no human who ever lived could do. You'll reach out, touch a switch, and turn the night back into day. For more than 300,000 years, there was no switch. When the sun went down, it took the entire world with it, and it stayed gone for 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours. Every night of every life, our ancestors faced a wall of darkness, with nothing on the other side but time. So here's a question almost nobody asks. What did they actually do with it? You probably picture something grim, a family huddled at the back of a cave, clutching each other in the cold, waiting in terror for the sun to come back, just surviving the night, enduring it. That picture is almost completely wrong. For ancient humans, the night wasn't the part of the day they survived. In some ways, it was the part where they became human. Start with the scale of it. Without electric light, darkness owned half of human existence. Not a footnote, half. If you only think about what people did under the sun, you've quietly skipped over 50% of every life that was ever lived. Half of human history happened in the dark, and we almost never think about it. And that darkness was not safe. Humans are a daytime animal. Our eyes are built for sunlight. In true darkness, we are nearly blind. The animals that hunt at night are not. Lions, leopards, hyenas, the predators that could end you saw the dark far better than you did. For a slow, soft, ground-dwelling ape, nightfall was the most dangerous hour of the day. So the first thing ancient humans did all night wasn't sleep. It was to not die. And the tool that made that possible changed our species forever. That tool was fire. We don't know the exact moment a human first kept a flame alive on purpose. The oldest solid evidence comes from Wondervert Cave in South Africa, ash and burnt bone, pointing to controlled fire around 1 million years ago. But fire didn't become a fixed, nightly fixture of human life until roughly 400,000 years ago. From that point on, the campfire sat at the center of the human night. And it did far more than throw light. Fire pushed predators back. Almost every animal is afraid of it. It produced heat, which mattered enormously, because somewhere along the way, we had shed most of our body hair and had no fur to sleep in. The Harvard biologist Richard Wrangham argues fire did something deeper still. It let us cook. Cooked food is softer and releases far more energy than raw. And Wrangham's case is that this is part of why our guts shrank and our brains grew. Fire also did something we rarely think about. It let Homo erectus climb down out of the trees for good and sleep on the open ground, because now the ground had a guardian. Fire fed the body, warmed the body, and guarded the body, and turned the terror of night into a room with walls of light. Which brings us to the obvious assumption that with no screens, no work, and nothing to do after dark, ancient humans must have slept like the dead. They didn't, and the way they actually slept is stranger than the myth. In 2017, the anthropologist David Sampson strapped sleep tracking devices to the Hadza, hunter-gatherers in Tanzania who still live without electricity, and recorded them night after night for 20 days. In all that time, across the whole group, there was a grand total of just 18 minutes when every single person was asleep at once. 18 minutes in 20 days. At nearly every moment of every night, someone in the camp was awake. And here's the part nobody planned. They weren't taking shifts. No one was assigned to guard duty. It happened on its own, because of age. The young tended to be night owls who stayed up late. The old tended to be light sleepers who woke at the smallest sound. Spread a few generations around one fire, and the camp accidentally runs a 24-hour watch without a single person deciding to. By the fire, the grandparents weren't a burden. They were the night shift. So how much did they sleep? Less than you'd guess. A landmark 2015 study led by Jerome Siegel tracked 3 separate peoples, the Hadza, the San, and the Chimane of Bolivia, across more than 1,000 nights combined. The result? About 6.5 hours a night, roughly what a stressed office worker gets today. They didn't pass out at sunset either. On average, they stayed up more than 3 hours after dark, then woke before dawn. What pulled them under wasn't the darkness. It was the cold. They fell asleep as the temperature dropped and woke at the night's coldest point. And in 2 of those languages, there is no word for insomnia. Barely anyone reported trouble sleeping at all, against more than 1 in 5 adults in countries like the United States. You may have heard a famous idea about ancient sleep, that people once slept in 2 shifts. A first sleep, after dark, an hour or 2 awake in the dead of night, to think, to talk, to pray, to make love. Then a second sleep until morning. The historian Roger Ekirch found hundreds of references to exactly this in old European records. And in the lab, when you put modern people into long, dark, winter-length nights, their sleep splits in 2 on its own. So which is real, one sleep or two? The honest answer is that it depended on where you lived. Near the equator, where Samson and Siegel did their work, the nights are even all year, and people sleep in a single block. In the far north, where winter darkness stretches for 14 or 16 hours, breaking sleep in two makes sense. The lost second sleep was never a universal human default. It was our species doing what it always does, bending to fit the world it woke up in. So what were they doing in those waking hours after dark? Plenty. The fire had to be fed and never allowed to die. Tools and weapons were repaired, hides scraped, the day's foraging cleaned and processed for tomorrow. Mothers nursed and settled children. Couples found the only real privacy the day ever gave them. When researchers asked the Chimane and the Hadza how they actually spend the night, the answers were strikingly ordinary and strikingly warm. They eat, they tend the little ones, and above all, they sit together and turn over the day that just ended. But none of this is the most important thing that happened after dark. The most important thing was the talking. In 2014, the anthropologist Polly Wiesner published a study built on something deceptively simple. She recorded what the Juhoansi actually talked about and compared the conversations of the day with the conversations of the night. In daylight, talk was business. Who went where? Who took too much meat? Plans, complaints, gossip. The grind of managing a day. Useful, necessary, and a little dull. Then the sun went down, the fire came up, and the conversation transformed. More than 80% of the talk around the fire was stories, tales of distant people and old hunts, myths, jokes, the dead, the far away, wrapped in singing, dancing, and ceremony. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar noted that firelight handed humans roughly 4 extra hours a day, hours useless for work and perfect for nothing but each other. And those firelit hours could go somewhere modern evenings never do. Among the sand, the great event of the night was the healing dance. The women seated in a tight circle around the fire, clapping and singing medicine songs in soaring, layered harmony, while the men danced around them for hours, sometimes until dawn, until a healer slipped into a trance, the Jews Hawansi call Kia, and moved through the camp, laying hands on the sick. Anthropologists like Richard Katz, who spent years documenting it, describe it not as a performance, but as communal medicine, a way to pull a grieving, anxious, quarreling group back into one body, several nights a month, in the dark, around a flame. Daylight belonged to the body, firelight belonged to the mind. Wiesner's argument is that this, the fireside, after dark, is where the human imagination was actually built, where gods were first described, where a person could be carried inside their own head to a time and place that did not exist. The campfire didn't just keep us warm, it may be where we became the storytelling species. And above the fire hung the other half of the ancient night, the sky. With no light pollution, the stars came all the way down to the horizon in their thousands, and ancient people read them like a page. The night sky was the first calendar. Across the world, the dawn rising of the Pleiades, the little cluster we call the Seven Sisters, was used to mark the turn of the seasons and the time to move to new food. It was the first map, the first clock, and very possibly the first library. Some astronomers argue that the story of the Seven Sisters, 7 women, one of them lost or hidden, which is why we count only 6, is told in so many separate cultures that it may reach back tens of thousands of years, perhaps the oldest story humans still tell. If they are right, somewhere overhead is a tale that has been passed from one firelit circle to the next, under the same stars, for longer than farming, writing, or cities have existed. So, what did ancient humans do all night? They watched over each other without being asked. They slept less than the legend, and more soundly than we do. And in the long, firelit hours between, they did the most human thing of all. They made meaning. The stories, the songs, the spirits, the entire inner world we still live inside, much of it was born in the dark, around a flame, with the day's work finally done. And then we won. We beat the darkness. We ran wires through the night and flooded it with light. And we did the one thing our ancestors never could. We turned night back into day. But we didn't spend those reclaimed hours on stories around a fire. We spent them on second shifts and unanswered emails and a small glowing rectangle held inches from our faces in the dark. We pushed the night back so far that we lost what was good in it: the fire, the circle, the quiet, the rest. More than 80% of people now live under skies so bright they will never see the Milky Way. A third of humanity has lost the stars entirely. The hunter-gatherers with no word for insomnia would not recognize what we did to the night. They had nothing to hold off the dark but a fire and each other, and it was enough. We have everything, and most of us lie awake anyway, lit blue, scrolling, still afraid in the end of the same old darkness. We just stopped telling each other stories about it.